Today, Lance Hill and I, me, Jonathan Calpan, will be talking about the Wright brothers and their STEM accomplishments. Many others in America have claimed to be the first ones to fly, but both Orville and Wilbur Wright were the first ones to be documented and filmed to have a sustained flight. The Wright Flyer, also known as Flyer 1, or the 1903 Flyer, was the first successful heavier-than-air powered aircraft designed and built by the Wright brothers. They flew it 4 times on December 17, 1903, near Kill Devil Hills, about 6 kilometers south of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The flight of the Wright Flyer marks the beginning of the pioneer era of aviation.
Thank you, Jonathan. The Wright brothers went from being young boys with a dream to being one of the most famous men of all time.
Hey, quick little editor's note here. It's 4 a.m. on a Friday, and I'm still editing this. It is the 27th of August. This was due yesterday. Anything after these 5 seconds will not have any effort put into it. Thank you very much. Bye.
They first started developing the knack for mechanical know-how in 1892 when they opened up their first bike shop. It would take about still 7 years later till they started getting into flight. They were following a German aviationist called Otto Lienhard until they had their sad demise in a glider crash, which got them thinking about flight. In 1900, they wrote the Smithsonian's for a book on aerodynamics, which they would get and learn the basics. They would study birds and many other things, which would later transform into, in 1903, the first flight. Some of the mechanics we will talk about later in this video, but right now, it took them 4 years to develop it. But until then, Jonathan will explain more.
Thank you, Lance. When the Wright brothers landed from their famous flight at Kitty Hawk on December 17th, you would be surprised to learn that almost no one was there. Just 5 people. This is surprising to us in the present because it has been almost 119 years since that day. The Wright brothers themselves weren't entirely sure what powered flight could achieve, but they passionately believed that the invention could help in wars. They believed that the power to see enemies from above would help eliminate the incentive to attack at all. Almost no one in the US was interested in their creation for any purpose at all. But the Wright brothers had the idea to go to Europe. It took many months before they found their first customer. They finally negotiated a contract with their first customer in 1907, the United States government. This is the first military contract in aviation history. It took 4 years to get someone to pay for their airplane design. Now let's talk about the technology that was put into the Wright Flyer. The Wright Flyer had 2 major technologies, the lightweight engine and warped wings. The warped wings were made through 3 years of testing with gliders by the 2 brothers, while, on the other hand, the engine, they couldn't find a suitable match because all the other engines were too heavy to put on their glider, so they had to invent their own. By using propellers and chains from bikes, they were able to create the first sustained flight.
Thanks to the technologies of the Wright brothers and them selling them off to many places in Europe, they eventually became wider spread. The aircraft. They eventually became one of the biggest things in the world, crossing the Atlantic. Warplanes and many things like that. They can be used for good or bad. It's just depending on how the people who bought them decide to use them. And those are the many things that they were used for, and will, and continue will be used for in the future. Flying higher than ever. The world was a changing time then. Many big events happened. The first modern World Series, Call of the Wild, was published. The first Model A Ford was produced. And many other things would soon come to change the world. But nothing as much to change aviation and engineering as the Wright brothers with the Wright Flyer.